What's up, guys? Nuance Bro checking in, and today, once again, we're going to be checking the polls surrounding the Democratic primaries, President Trump, and the election 2020 in general. So the last time we did this was a little less than 3 months ago, and you can see that video up here if you would like, but let's take a look at what's changed. Now, here on RealClearPolitics.com, we can see a list of the latest polls. We can see some for the Democratic presidential nomination nationwide. We can see New Hampshire primary, President Trump job approval, and we're going to take a look starting off with the Democratic presidential nomination. So here we can see the RCP average showing that Biden at 26.1% is 1.7% ahead his closest rival, Elizabeth Warren, at 24.4%. But if we look at the latest polls, we can see here, this is an Economist YouGov poll that Warren is ahead by 6. And in the last poll ahead of that, before that, we can see Monmouth having Warren ahead by 3. Now, if we scroll down, we can see these graphs showing the different candidates listed by different colors of lines. And last time we did this video was right about here, where we saw Biden at 27.3%, Warren at 16.3%, Sanders at 14.8%, and Harris at 14.3%. And this was around July 13th, so a little less than 3 months ago. Now, what has happened since then? Well, let's first take a look at Harris. We can see this orange line here, and remember, when we covered this, she had her little debate moment, and she rose up from about 7% or so, and she went up close to the top of the pack here. You can see her at about 15. And since our video, we can see around July 13th that orange line has just gone down and down and down till right about here. So we've seen around an 11-point drop, almost an 11-point drop for Harris there, which is pretty sad. Now let's reset again and take a look at how Senator Warren has done. We can see Warren at 16.3, right around second place, but pretty close to Sanders and Harris and all of them. But then since the video, we can see she held steady for a little bit, had a little bit of a bump, and then stayed steady some more. And just in the last few weeks, we can see that her numbers just shot up here. And now she's kind of neck and neck with Biden in the national polling. Now, honestly, when it comes to polling, I don't really care that much about the national numbers. What really matters to me are the primary states, the states that are first to vote in the nation. And because those kind of set the benchmark for who's going to maybe eventually be the eventual nominee. And it really makes a difference. If someone wins a primary, people see momentum behind that candidate, and it can make a huge difference. So let's go look at the first in the nation primary, Iowa. And here we can see in the RCP average that Warren is at 23%, which is 2.7% higher than her closest rival, Joe Biden. So let's take a look at the graph. So last video, we had the graph right around here. We had Biden at 26, Sanders at 15.7, Warren at 13.3, Buttigieg, and then Harris. Now, let's take a look at Harris once again just to see what's happened since our video. Now, let's go a little bit before, and we can see Harris was at the bottom here. She, of course, had her debate performance, which rose her to the top of the pack almost here in Iowa, just right behind Biden. Biden was at 24, Harris was at 16, Warren right behind at 15, Sanders at 14. And then, of course, we just go down and down and down, and now she's at 5.3. So we had her up here at 16, and now she's down at 5.3. So once again, 11-point drop. Now, once again, let's take a look at Elizabeth Warren. We had her here at 13.3, Biden at 26, Sanders at 15.7. And we move along to today, and we can see she's ahead of the pack. She's at 23, Biden's at 20.3, and Sanders has gone down to 12, almost tied effectively with Pete Buttigieg at 11.3. So big differences here. Warren seems to be ahead at the moment. Also, quick note, Iowa is a caucus state, not a technical primary state. We call them the primaries, but caucusing is just a little bit different. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to call everything a primary. So let's move on to the New Hampshire primaries, which is the second in the nation primary. So here in the RCP average, we can see Biden at 23.2%, That's 2.2% ahead of his closest rival, Elizabeth Warren, at 21%. Now let's go down to the graph. Now, last time we had Biden way ahead at 34.5%. We had Sanders in second place at 19%, and then Warren at 12.5%, Buttigieg at 9.5%, and Harris at 6.5%. Now, I don't know what it is about my video, but it seems maybe Biden had some bad luck because of it. That's a joke for those of you who don't get it. But right after that, he experienced a severe dip in support here in New Hampshire. So you can see his numbers went down from 34.5, and as we go to the modern day, he is at 23.2. So we see about an 11-point drop for Biden, and he's right there with Warren. They're pretty much neck and neck there. So let's take a look at Harris. She was at about 6.5%, and she had her big breakout moment. She went up to about 13%, and we go to the modern day, and she's at about 5.5%. So not that big a deal. She probably was never going to win New Hampshire in the first place, but let's take a look at Warren. Starting here at 14%, we can see she makes a little bit of a climb up to 18%. And as the days go on, we can see once again in the last few weeks, reaching all-time highs now at 21%. Now, something of note that's interesting here, this is Sanders' backyard effectively. He's a senator from Vermont, which is the state right next door. New Hampshire and Vermont, you could say share a lot of the same sort of culture, same types of people, and generally people from Vermont, like Sanders, would be pretty favorable in New Hampshire, but he's not doing so well here. So if he loses this primary, it wouldn't fare too well for him. Now, third in line is South Carolina, so let's move on to there. Now, we have no graph here, but I think it's just interesting to note that Biden is way ahead here. You can see in the RCP average that he is at 38.3%. That's 22.3% ahead of his closest rival, Elizabeth Warren. And you can see here in just the previous polls, I mean, he's at 37%, 37%, 43%, 36%. So he's way ahead in the polls. And I think it's pretty safe to say that South Carolina is in the bag for him, absent something just absolutely crazy happening. Now, if we go to Nevada, once again, no graph here. And as we start going down the list here, you're going to see less and less frequent polling for these farther down the line states, because that's just the nature of these things. But here we can see Biden is ahead by about 2.3%, but this time we have Sanders in second place. So Biden is at 24%, and he's 2.3% ahead of his closest rival, Bernie Sanders, at 21.7%. And in the most recent CNN poll, you can see that Biden and Sanders are effectively tied. So Nevada is going to be a close and interesting race to watch. Now, I want to go to California, because California now is actually going to be a lot earlier in the primary process than before. So let's take a look at California. And once again, no graph, and the polling is not as frequent as, other early primary states or even the national polling. But here we can see Biden in the RCP average is ahead by 2.6%. He's at 24.3%, 2.6% ahead of his closest rival, Elizabeth Warren, at 21.7%. But look at this most recent poll by the LA Times/Berkeley. Elizabeth Warren is 9 points ahead of her closest rival, Joe Biden here. So we can see that, like I said, in the last few weeks, things have kind of shifted. But if you look at the date of the poll, it's around the same time as the other polls, like the Emerson poll and the KGTV poll, which is September 13th through September 18th. But the other ones ended a few days before the LA Times Berkeley poll. So maybe those few days really made a difference, and that's when Warren got her upswing, or it's just, the nature of polls. That's just the way it is. But a 9-point difference is not insignificant at all. Now, one hilarious thing I want to note here is this Emerson poll. If you look at the numbers for Yang and Harris, we can see that Yang is actually ahead of Harris in this one Emerson poll, where Yang is at 7%, but Harris is at 6%. So I just thought that was pretty funny, because Senator Harris is, of course, a senator from California. You would expect her to be doing pretty well in her own home state, but Andrew Yang is beating her in that one poll in her home state. So that's got to be embarrassing. I thought it's kind of funny, so I wanted to include that in the video. Now let's look at Donald Trump's approval ratings, because I think this is an important way to determine, a president's sort of chances going into an election and seeing how the president is viewed by the public. Now, this is from the website 538 that's run by Nate Silver. He's kind of more of a Democrat-leaning political statistician type guy. He's known for predicting the Obama presidency like perfectly, I think in 2012. If I'm not mistaken. He didn't do too well in the 2016 election as far as his predictions, but that's a different matter. But here on 538, he has all the data from all the polls, and you can see it here, and you can see the different data points. We have two trend lines here, the orange and the green, representing disapprove and approve. And if we look here, we can see the most recent iteration of these polls on day 986 of the presidency. We have 53.8% disapprove and 41.3% approve. Now, keep in mind, this is for all polls. Now, let's say we go to poll of all adults, and we can see that disapprove goes up and that approve goes down. So there's an even bigger gap. We have 54.6% disapprove and 40.1% approve. But what we really care about are the registered or likely voters. So let's go to that one. And we go there and we see it's as close as it gets as far as all those different options I showed you between all polls and all adult people. And now we have the likely or registered voters. And now we see disapprove at 53.6% and approve at 42.3%. Now, looking at this, you might say, well, that doesn't look good for President Trump. And you could also say things like, well, the polls going into the 2016 election weren't so good for Trump in the first place, but he still won anyways. And those are all important factors to take into account. But let's go down and compare it to previous presidents, namely President Obama. So if we scroll down here, we can see different graphs representing Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, and basically a bunch of other previous presidents and their polling numbers at different points in their presidency. Here, for example, you can see George W. Bush. Look at him with his 88.1% approval rating. Now, you could probably guess what this giant spike was for him in approval. Of course, that was after 9/11 happened, so he got a huge bump in his approval rating. But let's look at this Obama graph right here. Now, as you can see in this graph, every 4 days they kind of update this graph here. So 507, 511, day 514. Sometimes, it's like 3 days or whatever, but generally every 4 days or so, there's an update. Now, let's go to today, and we can see in day 986 of the presidency, Obama was at 43% and Trump was at 41.3%. Now, of course, Obama was reelected, and these were his numbers going into the election. And let's not forget, Obama got way more positive coverage than Donald Trump has gotten, in the last 986 days of his presidency. But what I want to show you is this interesting number, the one right before this day 986. If we click one back, we can see day 978. Donald Trump's approval rating actually overtakes that of Barack Obama's. Trump at 43.1%, while Obama's at 42.6%. Now, of course, a single point in this entire timeline showing Trump above Obama doesn't really mean that much, but it does show that Trump's not just, his approval rating's not so low that it's impossible for re-election, because we've seen Obama has been at this level before, and he, of course, got re-elected. So it's important to note. Now, of course, no video like this would be complete without looking at the betting markets. Now, the betting markets are interesting because it's not polling, obviously, but this is people who are trying to turn a profit based on betting who they think will be the nominee. And it's interesting to see who people have at the top of the pack when their money is on the line. And at the top of the pack for the Democrats, we can see Elizabeth Warren at 45 cents. Now we can see she's down 3 cents recently, and Joe Biden's up by 4 cents at 26 cents. But look how interesting this is. Andrew Yang at 11 cents, above Bernie Sanders, above Hillary Clinton, who's in there for some reason. I guess some people think she's going to enter the race and run potentially. And then after that, you got Pete Buttigieg, no change, and Kamala Harris coming in pretty much last at 4 cents and down 1 cent recently. Now, I've never put my money towards these betting markets. I try to keep my money away from that type of gambling. But if you would like to put your money to good use, why not go to nuancebro.com/join and support this channel? It helps us continue work like this and the interviews you see us go to. I'm trying to go to Politicon soon in a few weeks and interview people there. So if you'd like to help support this channel, nuancebro.com/join. All right, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Looks like there has been significant change since last time, and we're going to try to keep doing these videos fairly regularly, especially if there's some significant change. But yeah, that's the end of the video, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Social media links are in the description box below, as well as merch. And I'll see you next time, bro.